Very good afternoon. Thanks for clicking on to Vogan's European Outlook for Monday, the 27th of March. Hope everybody is well. Beautiful sunny day here in the northern half of the British Isles, and indeed much of the UK has seen a fairly decent day overall. Little area of high pressure that is basically ahead of the next weather system that will move in off the Atlantic during the course of this evening. This is the GFS ensemble, the 850 temperature profile for London, and you can see here, of course, it's going from a below average back well above average over the next several days as warmer air starts to move in from the west and southwest, and we are going to see temperatures knocking the door of 18 Celsius. I think during the course of this week could well be the warmest day of the year so far, actually, as 850 temperatures climb into the close to 10 Celsius, potentially anyway, across the southeast corner of the UK. Now you can see here, this is, of course, this red line. I'm not going to show pull the cursor over because it just it brings up that little chart there, and it's a bit irritating to kind of see. But you can see the overall model consensus showing this sharp rise in temperature. Then it drops back closer to average as we open the door to the month of April, and then there's an argument that actually during that first week of April, so in other words, next week, or really from the weekend into next week, the temperature trend actually goes back below the average, so to speak, for London. So you can see the overall idea anyway for London. This is Manchester. You can see the same idea, above average, +5 at 850. Then it drops back closer to the average. And then the argument is that the general consensus being that the temperature goes below average at 850 into next week. And this is for Inverness. It looks as if there's a little bit less certainty for that. So further north, actually quite interesting that the temperature stays more above average or average as opposed to further south, which is, like I say, quite interesting to see. Looking at the rainfall, so of course, this is actually an interesting tweet. I'll show you the rainfall anomaly in just a second. This is an interesting tweet here by Wanstead Weather, saying that there's been on each of the last each of the last 22 days, sorry, we've seen precipitation, making it the wettest March since 2001, which is quite interesting. Of course, 2001 is the cold spell that we had at the beginning of the month was comparable to that. We had more -15 or lower days during March of 2023 than we've had any time since 2001. So it's quite interesting how he goes on to say that it's the wettest March for the London area, I believe, anyway, based on what I'm reading in the tweet, since 2001. So it's been a very, very wet month, and especially so across the bulk of England and Wales. A little bit less so compared to average further north. I believe Northern Ireland's had quite a wet month, and indeed more southern areas of Scotland drier the further north you go, and primarily due to the blocking, of course. But this is off the CFSV2. You can see here above average precipitation, firmly above average through the next 7 days. So that takes us into the month of April here. As you can see, week 2, then we'll start to see the focus of heaviest precipitation on the continent, less so in the UK, and we seem to go into a drier theme into week 3. So this is the period between the 9th of April and the 16th of April here. So I believe anyway we will start to see a slightly drier theme as we progress into the month of April, and the GFS certainly indicates that we could see more in the way of higher pressure. Now this is precipitation of the GFS here, and you can see as I play through the animation here, the focus of wettest conditions is largely across the northwest, then into the southern half of the British Isles. We'll look at this in a little bit more detail in a second, because there's a deep area of low pressure that the models are seeing develop, an area of low thunderstorms over the southeastern half of the United States, and that looks as if the models are trying to see that developing into a fairly deep feature potentially as we progress towards the 1st of April and whatnot. So, but you can see here as I play through the loop here, there's a little bit less prominence in rainfall into the first half of April as opposed to what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. We've seen an incredibly wet period, really, when you think about that. And you notice here that by the time we reach this is Wednesday, the 12th of April, so we're nearly into the middle portion of the month. And you notice the focus of wettest conditions actually across the central portion of Europe here, less so across the UK. And you notice here parts of northern Scotland, the Murray Coast, Inverness, um, seeing less rainfall down the Aberdeenshire coast as well. Along the south coast of England, it looks as if there's not a great deal of rainfall. Generally speaking, here we do have more systems coming in, but like I say, I think we're going to start to see higher pressure becoming a little bit more of a dominant player. So this is the overview chart, of course. Here's the weather system moving in from the west. Now you notice here that area of low pressure is very, very large, almost encompassing the entire North Atlantic. The isobars surrounding this low pressure centre, extending from the east coast of Newfoundland all the way to the British Isles. If you notice here, we play through the loop here, and what we've got is we've got features running underneath the parent low into the UK. So that wet weather, remember I showed you in the precipitation loop, primarily initially over the northwest of the British Isles. Then here's that area of low pressure that is only merely an area of thunderstorms over the southeastern United States at the moment. That system then develops on a strengthening jet stream crossing over the Atlantic, very flat jet at that initially, and then we start to see a little bit more waviness developing here. The jet stream becomes a little bit more amplified, more buckled, and therefore I think higher pressure is going to start to build over the British Isles with the buckling of the jet stream here. So you can see that feature riding underneath aboard a fairly strong area of jet stream winds, of course, at the 200 millibar level. That feature then moves into southern Ireland. Now, of course, the track depth of this area of low pressure is going to remain quite uncertain. The models are going to come and go with this, but you can see here a 983 millibar low centered close to Dublin. This is on Friday the 31st, so this is the upcoming Friday, and it'll be interesting to see how deep the area of low pressure is, where it tracks. Of course, the southern flank of that will have the strongest winds. Could be over the north of France, it could be over the southern half of England. We'll watch this space as we go forward. But you notice here this area of high pressure between the Azores and Iberia. That's going to kind of poke its nose northwards between a new area of low pressure coming on in off North America. The area of low pressure that's over the British Isles, bringing wind and rain and whatnot. But we start to see little subtle changes taking place as the system then moves east. We start to see the building of this high pressure. It starts to build northwards over the eastern portion of the North Atlantic, and that could set the wheels in motion for a different type of pattern as we progress towards the end of week 1 of April into week 2, and this is where certainly the GFS is indicating we've got a little bit more in the way of higher pressure developing, which is quite interesting to see that. And remember what I showed you, a little bit less cold at 850 over Inverness versus colder the further south you go, Manchester and London. The 850 temperatures in the overall ensemble indicates that it goes back below average once again. So it may be starting to pick up on a little bit of an easterly wind the further south you go, less so further north, less wind with sunshine. You get, of course, a fairly decent rise in temperature, of course, without the wind. But easterly winds, of course, that could peg back the temperature. We could see a bit of a Scandinavian high developing, colder air running underneath that area of high pressure, for example. So I think we are going to start to see a little bit of a change taking place into the month of April as opposed to March, which, like I said, according to Wanstead Weather, the wettest March since 2001, in stark contrast to the incredibly dry February that we've seen, remember. So this up and down, pattern that we've seen for the last several months, taking us through the winter season and indeed now into the spring season as well, has been quite dramatic, this kind of up and down type scenario here. Off the CFSV2 for the week 1, you can see here this is the 500 millibar anomaly. So we're going to continue to see quite warm conditions across the southwest, across Spain and Portugal, into the south of France. We've got lower pressure further north, as you can see here. We've got that low over Scandinavia, as you can see. So in the week 2, so this takes out the period between 2nd and the 9th of April, and there's that trough developing over the heart of Europe. We've got a region to the southwest, to the northwest of the British Isles. Then as we progress towards the 9th through the 16th of April, we've got that area of high pressure closer to the north as opposed to the south, and as we continue to press through the second half of April, of course, this is a way out into fantasy land. Very, very difficult to say exactly what takes place. Finally, 850 temperatures, or should I say, this is the 2-meter temperature anomaly. Upcoming 7 days, warmer than average, if you notice here. Then week 2, we've got cold than average across the central portion of Europe because of that trough in place. There's that ridge of high pressure, keeping things a little bit warmer across the north, average across the south, possibly even slightly below average across the south, and that reflects quite nicely in those 850 temperatures, and then it goes slightly warmer than average, as you can see here, through the remainder of the month. I will, in the next several days, have an April forecast on markloganweather.com, so do stay tuned for that. But I think that's it for now. Thanks for watching. As always, of course, do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Lots of things to look forward to on the channel, as well as markloganweather.com, as we build the summer forecast. I will continue to look more and more at that in the coming days and weeks as well. So thanks for watching. Like I say, enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I'll hopefully be back again tomorrow with more. Bye for now.